Learning the Ili Nishmas Etta Ahuva Basaka Masachas Gitin Perik Gimel Mishna Beis Hakosev Teifsei Gitin. If someone's writing like samples of Gitin, so he has them when he needs them. Tzarich Sheaniach Makam Ish Makam Ish Makam Azman. He can write everything in the get. Besides, he has to leave out the man's name, the woman's name, and the Zman. The Gemara says Tzarich Sheaniach Amar B'Yudah Mashmul Tzarich Sheaniach Af Makam Harei At Muteres L'Chol Adam. We're going to see soon that this is only according to one Shita, but this is going according to the Shita of Belazar that Edim is Sirikarti, and he holds Vikasav, it's not going on the Chasim, it's going on the Ksiva, so the whole Ksiva has to be Lishma. So therefore, Hareyat Muteres L'Chol Adam, which is the main part of the get, has to be left out also, and only written L'Shem Ha'isha. The Mishnah continues, Shtare Milva, by Shtare Milva also, same thing, Tzarich Sheaniach, Makam HaMalva, Makam HaLoiva, Makam HaMois, Makam HaZman. You have to leave out the place of the Malva Loiva, the place where the loan happened, and how much money it was, and the time that it was. Shtare Mekach, Tzarich Sheaniach, Makam HaLekeach, Makam HaMoich, Makam HaMois, Makam HaSoda, Makam HaZman. You have to leave out the place of the seller, the buyer, again, the amount of money, the field that's being sold for the description of it, and the time. So now the Mishnah says the reason for this whole thing, for all these things, by getting Milva and Mekach, is because Mibnei Takana. So the Gemara says there's three pshatim what we mean. The first pshat in the Gemara is that we're going like a Eliezer, like we said before, that Edim is Sirikarti, and the whole get has to be written Lishma. And therefore, Me'ikar Adin, even the Taifes HaGet shouldn't be allowed to be written. You shouldn't be able to have these samples to continue to write as a get, but because of a takan of a sefer, that the sefer is going to be busy and he's going to need a get right away, so therefore they allowed him to have these taifsei gitin, but the Torah he had to leave blank. So let's just continue the Mishnah according to the Shita. Rabbi Yehuda Paisa Bekulan, he held that you can't write even by Gitin the Taifsin, because he was geyser the Taifis atu the Tairif. And he also held by Shtar Shtaris is not good, because he was geyser Shtar Shtaris atu Gitin. So Shtar Milvin and Shtar Mekach, he held you can't do like that. And Belazar Ma'achsher Bekulan, he's the last sheet that holds that everything is good. Chutz me Gitei Nashem, shenemer v'kasav lo l'shma. So he held by Gitei Nashem, you can't do it at all, because he was geyser the Taifis atu the Tairif. But he held that you could write by Shar Shtarts. The second pshat in the Gemara is that it's really going like Rameir in the Mishnah, that Eidei Chasima Karti, and therefore even the Tairif you're allowed to write. There's no halacha of the Kasav lo l'shma on the Ksiva. But the takana over here, when the Mishnah says takana, is a reason why you can't write the Tairif, because we're afraid that it's going to come to fight. So it's a takana of kitata. The third sheet in the Gemara is Reb Chista that says it's because of takanas agunas, and this the Gemara says it could either be going like Rameir, the Eidei Chasima Karti, and therefore you should be allowed to write everything. But they made exer that people are going to see a get, and therefore they're going to give it to their wives for no reasons, even though they don't want a divorce. And they're going to make them into aguna. Or it could be going like a Belazar, that Edim is Sirikarti, and therefore the Vikas of law has to be Lishma, and therefore you shouldn't be allowed to write anything, but they allowed you to write it because sometimes a person is going to be going to Medina Sayyam, and he's not going to see a sefer, and he's going to leave before he gives a get to his wife. His wife's going to be aguna, so they want to have the get ready. The Mishnah Gimel, Hamevi Gev Avad Heimenu, if someone loses a get, Matzah Alter Kasher, if he finds it right away, it's Kasher, V'im Lav, possible, but if he finds it La'achar Zman, it's possible. So the Gemara has to steer from a different brayso that says if it's found La'achar Zman, as long as the Baal says Tanu, then we give it. So the Gemara is that's designed that our mission is talking about a case that Shayaris Mitzuyin, and it's also a case that it's Huchsaku Shnei Yosef and Shimon, and that's why it's a problem. But if it would not be Shayaris Mitzuyus, then as long as the Baal says to give it, and there's no chash of nimach that he changed his mind, you would give it la'achar zman. The Gemara says two other exceptions, that even if Shayaris Mitzuyus, you would give it la'achar zman if the Baal says, if there are Edim that said that they only signed on this get, or there's a nekev b'tzada is plain, so it's a simimuvik, so therefore we know for sure it's that get. So as long as the Baal wasn't nimach, and he says to give it la'achar zman, you could give it la'achar zman. What does it mean, la'alter? So in the Gemara, there's 6 pshatim, but we won't go through them. The next halacha of the Mishnah is matzu b'chafisai b'dluskama imakire kasher. If he found it in his leather pouch or in a place where they keep the shtaris, Im makir, Rashi says, is really a third case, or he's makir it, so he knows for sure it's his get. So then we assume that it's his. He could assume it's his get, and it's kosher. He could give it. The last halacha of the Mishnah is there are three cases that we say chazaka, that if something was like that before, we assume that it's still like that. The first case is hamevi get v'niach zakein or chayla noisel lebechetzke shu kaim. If an old person or a chayla gives his get to a shliach, the shliach could assume that the baal is still alive. And the Gemara says by zakein that wouldn't apply if he's a zakein shegiel legvuras, which is 80, or geises, which is roiv geises in lemisa. Unless the Gemara says if he's 100 years old, so then there's a svara, the second pshat in the Gemara, we say kiven the iflig, since he was already different from the derech kol haaretz, that he was mayrich sol yamim until 100, then you could assume that he's still alive. The next case in the mission is Bas Yisrael Nesuas L'Kayim V'Halach Bailam Medinas Hayam Achelos B'Truma. A woman who's eating truma because her husband's a kohen, she could assume that her husband is still alive even if he went away, and she could continue eating truma again because of chazaka. And the last case is Hashalech Chatasim Medinas Hayam. If someone sends his carbon chatas Medinas Hayam with a shliach, and the Gemara explains that even though l'chatchila you need smicha, if you're able to do smicha, you have to do smicha. Taisus explains. So it's only by carbon nashim where there's no smicha, or by chatas ha'oif where there's no smicha. Then the shliach could assume that the person who's sending the carbon is still alive. You don't have to assume that it's a chatas shemesu ba'aleh, that perhaps he died.